Welcome to Field Notes. Today we're talking with Jake Kaderly of Kaderly Ag. He crop consults in the Greene County area, and we're going to be talking about the economics of conservation agriculture. And Jake's run a bunch of numbers, and he's here to talk with us about some of those numbers and what that looks like from an economics perspective. So welcome, Jake. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Hey Jake. As far as just getting started here, how about we start by talking about what kind of things come to mind when you think about conservation economics as a buzzword, or in the context of your farm, what does conservation economics mean?
Well, fellas, I'm thinking that conservation economics is just comparing the no-till cover crop system to the standard tillage system that's on about 2/3 of the land that's out there. And there's a lot of advantages to being in a no-till cover crop system versus, let's just call it the old way of farming. Because one, and I had this little light went on one day, and when you talk to farmers, they always say, I want to make my farm better than it was, before, so that the next generation has a better farm to farm than I did. Well, you can't make your farm better if you have erosion. You're losing soil faster than you're replacing it. So the first priority has to be to keep the soil in place. And then adding the cover crops just adds another layer to that system of keeping your soil in place and building it up. So, and in today's world, we have to have yield to make profit. I mean, the other thing I always tell guys is you take an empty truck to the elevator, they're not going to pay anything for it. You got to haul grain to the elevator. So the more grain you produce, the more profitable you are. So if you can make your soil better, you're going to be a more profitable farmer and you're going to make money at this. That's why we're all doing it, is to make a living. So
Yeah, definitely. And as far as like measuring those things out uh, into actual numbers, I know that you've done a little bit of work like with a case study on your farm and things like that, but how do you assess the benefit of these different practices that you're talking about?
well, I'll just kind of go back. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day about my farm in '05, and I didn't do any physical farming until 2014 that I actually bought equipment. I was having it all done custom work. And if you're paying for it, you know what it costs. I mean, you're not saying, oh, I got this tractor and I just drive it around. I mean, you're writing the check out for it every year. So I knew that no-till, was the least expensive way to farm. And so then when I started farming, I bought a 1968 IH 1256 that at the time cost me $8,500. And I went and bought a corn planter for about the same money and added some things to it. And basically, I was farming with an old tractor and a corn planter, and that's all I had. So, if a young guy wants to start farming, that's the way to do it. I mean, go buy an old tractor that's pretty solid, and my corn planter's a 1997 white, and it does a pretty good job as long as you keep it up and keep it in good condition. And when we did the case study, they were using custom rates, for the Midwest. Basically, I think they took Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, and kind of combined them to come up with, what dollars it cost to plant and harvest and all those things like that. So my numbers are probably actually lower than theirs because You know, I don't have $100,000 planter. I have a $15,000 planter, you know, and I was pulling it with a $10,000 tractor. Well, now I've made enough money that I got one with a cabin, air conditioning, and so on. So it's a little nicer to be out there. But the other thing I did started farming that is probably different than most, being I was agronomist, I started investing in the soil fertility right away. You know, I was putting on extra fertilizer and doing things. The piece of land I farmed was in the family for a long time, but it'd been rented uh, to my brother-in-law, and he did a pretty good job with it. But it wasn't grid sampled like I do, and we through grid sampling, I found a lot of holes to fill, and once I did that, then you know my yields just continually keep going up. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's cool that, because you started off with zero equipment, right? And you had to custom hire everything. You have those numbers as to what that you feel that a lot more tangibly because that's, every time you're writing a check, for that tillage pass in the spring or, that field cultivating or whatever it is, it's like, okay, that's a check, that's a check, that's a check. It's not just, oh, well, I'm just riding my tractor. And so that hits when it's like, okay, springtime, I'm just going to plant rather than run two passes of some form of tillage or soil finishing. So I never thought about how custom work is that much more tangible from a conservation economics perspective, is it really brings that number home to you. But yeah, I don't know, Michael, should we dive into some of these numbers that you were talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the clear one already is the savings on fuel cost. But we could definitely dive into that more or any of the practices or Jake, whatever you have most ready for us that you want to share.
well, just if you guys go to custom rates in Wisconsin, then you're going to see like a chisel plowing is $25 an acre, and a finishing pass is $18 to $20 an acre. So there's let's see, 20, 40, $43 an acre with no tillage. That's an advantage for a no-till guy right out of the box. Not to even talk about the the soil savings and the erosion effects of tillage and the effects on the soil. It's just there's $43 that I don't have to spend. And when I was looking at that, I'm like, instead of spending money on tillage, I'm going to spend money on fertilizer and lime and those things that my soil needs and ship that money over there because it needs it. And so I can just take those dollars away and put it over into the fertility side.
On that note, I've heard a lot of people that are still doing, the two tillage passes and things like that, that there's a yield advantage to doing that that pays for itself. And I realize maybe that's even clearer right now with how low corn is, that maybe that isn't the case. But have you seen that there's any yield advantage to that more conventional system compared to your system, or how do those numbers shake out for your farm?
I've actually been in the corn growers, national corn growers, several times. And one year I took a look at the whole country's, yields. Let's say I looked at Wisconsin. I think I looked at Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, the Indiana and the I states, and that the no-till division actually out yielded the conventional division. So when people always say that oh, tillage yields more than no-till, not in a high yield environment, it doesn't. So as an agronomist, when I see things go wrong with no-till, it's they don't have the fertility in place. So the no tillage will actually amplify those deficiencies, and then they're seeing that their crops aren't as good. So it's more of a fertility thing than it is a tillage thing. the other thing, the other thing about no-till is it takes about 2 to 3 years for the soil to adjust. That you got to stick with it. You can't just go, oh, 1 year I'm going to till and the next year I'm going to no-till.
Makes total sense.
You got to stick with
I
the
guess a bit of a
no-till
transition.
system for,
Go ahead.
I'd say, really 3 to 5 years to see the soil mellow out and change and become used to not being tilled, because the biology's got to come back. And the other thing I tell guys, if you're a worm and you come along with tillage and you destroy my house and bury my food every year, am I going to have a big family? No, you're not, because I don't have a place to live and I don't have anything to eat. So once that residue comes up on top and they've got food to live in and you're not destroying the burrows, they really take off and change the soil profile immensely.
We've talked a little bit about no-till and how it's a paring down, right? You're getting rid of some of these elements that you used to have to pay for your different passes across the field. I kind of want to transition to cover crops because that's something that you're adding into your system, right? Rather than taking away passes, you're adding in a pass of planting another crop, right? In quotation marks, that you're not going to harvest. And so I wonder, when you think about the economics of cover crops, what does that look like to you? Because it's something that you are adding into your system that you're paying for. And I'm wondering, how does that pay off when you work with either your clients or on your own farm?
Pays off in a lot of ways. We're rolly around here, 4 to 8% of my soils, and I've got customer that's got even steeper ground than that. So one is the big erosion savings there. And like I said, and you can throw a lot of numbers at erosion, and that's hard to do, but I've seen a guy just go down and price black dirt to be hauled in and put that on, and the tons that you're losing, and you can add up some dollars in a big way, in a real hurry that way. Two, you're feeding the biology of the soil. You're keeping a living root in the ground. People don't realize this, and I didn't either till about 10 years ago, that plants, they photosynthesize and make carbohydrates, but they also leak that carbohydrate back into the soil and feed the biology. So by having a crop there, when you don't, in that early spring, you're collecting the energy from the sun and you're adding back carbon. And we've been talking, there's a lot of things going on with the carbon market right now. You're adding carbon back into the system, which I also did that one day. I said, what is carbon? Well, 1/3 of carbon is carbohydrate, which is sugar. So the soil system runs on sugar, just like we do. I mean, if we're kind of running down, we grab a soda and drink it and we pep back up. So those bugs in the ground, they need carbohydrates and sugar too. So that's what's feeding them. So you're adding to the system. Now, because I test every other year, I went back now 6 years and looked at my organic matter. And that's what I'd see. I started doing cover crops in 2018, and I've added 0.5% of organic matter to my soil in 6 years. Well, one, you can't do that if it's eroding away. And two, you can't do that if you're not growing the cover crop to add into the soil. So there's a lot of benefits there in that you're growing something that is beneficial to the soil. And the other thing, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this, but if you do tillage and make the soil bare, what does Mother Nature try to do? She tries to make something grow. Generally, it's weeds. So it's much better to have a good crop growing there than weeds. So even in the no-till system, I've seen a lot of chickweed and things like that come in, because Mother Nature wants that ground to be covered. So I actually had a guy call me up and ask if he could have chickweed for a cover crop.
That's easier. You don't have to plant it. It just comes in.
Yeah. He said, I got a
Yeah.
natural cover crop.
Jake, do you grow much for, I'm not sure what your crop rotation, if it's just corn, soybeans, or if you do anything with small grains or anything else, but have you or like worked with your clients or anything like that on any like legumes like that or something that's putting nitrogen back in the ground?
Okay, so I do corn, soybeans, and wheat. I'd like to get in that I have a third, a third, a third. Because I have my contour strips and so on. I haven't quite got that just tweaked yet, but after wheat, I put in a six-way cover crop mix, and that I've been doing for, probably 10 or 12 years. And I played with that mix a lot through the years, and I've kind of come up with this now. I run after wheat. Now, I usually try to get it in, last week of July, first week of August. I run 12 pounds of peas and oats, 6 pounds of sorghum sudan, 3 pounds of hairy vetch, 3 pounds of red clover, and 3 pounds of radishes. And then when the corn follows that cover crop versus following soybeans, except for last year when it was extremely dry and the cover crop took a bunch of moisture, there's a 20 bushel yield bump versus following beans. And then, if you go to corn on corn, there's another penalty, probably of another 10 or 15 bushel. So I've actually hit 300 bushel corn on that, following that wheat crop. And I was on the combine and I'm just like, it's custom harvested and I was riding with him and I'm like, holy cats, this thing's going, 310, 320, 325, back to 310. And yep, it's consistently 300 bushel corn. So corn likes to, and there's something about radishes. And I've done a little research about that too. I have some nematode issues on top of my hills because that was prairie back, before it was farmed. And there's some grass nematodes in there, and radishes seem to beat up nematodes. And once I got the radishes in those fields, then the yields jumped some more. So, and I actually discovered them following the yield monitor on the combine. We're jumping around like 50 bushel, and I'm like, why are we going from 175 to 225? And I figured out did some testing then, and it was nematodes, and you can't. The only way to find them is to test them because you can't see them, and a lot of times you can't even see the damage you're doing unless you're digging corn really consistently. And I found most guys don't like working with a shovel.
It's an important tool, actually.
Yeah, very important tool.
Turns out. Yeah. When you follow that mix that you put after wheat with corn, are you pulling back on your nitrogen at all, or are you just seeing that as an additional source of nitrogen for you?
I'm just going to take the extra yield, but we did do some testing here last fall, and it didn't really grow real good last fall, but we're making about 80, 85 pounds of N out of that mix in the fall. And we didn't test it in the spring because you got some more legume growth, with the red clover, and the hairy vetch seems to come through too. So we'll make some more in with that. So that's probably why I'm getting that extra 20 bushel, because there's some more nitrogen there.
Yeah. So we're talking about the cost too, and so we know there's the cost of like tillage, obviously, but um have you found, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that people are seeding cover crops. Have you found one economically makes more sense than another, maybe that works best on your farm or your area?
If you want to stand, you got to drill it. There's
Yeah.
guys been trying to fly things on and do it, different ways, but you got to drill it. I got a John Deere no-till drill, and it doesn't disturb the soil a lot, but I do like it in the fall. It will go through the stalks, and it's kind of almost does what a light vertical till would do, but I'm planting seeds too when I'm going through. The other thing, if you're going to be a no-tiller, you've got to process your corn stalks. I've got Calmer knife rolls in my corn head, and they cut up the stalk in about 1 inch, 2 inch pieces. And once I did that, my problems with throwing chains on the corn planter and things plugging up in between, those headaches went away. So if you really want to do that and have smooth sailing, so to speak, you got to process those corn stalks, whether it's a head that's got knives underneath of it or knife rolls or whatever you want to do. You got to get them chopped up and on the ground so that the biology can start working on them.
One thing we talked about earlier a little bit was how, you kind of took the money that you would have otherwise been putting towards custom hiring some tillage in the spring and put that towards your fertilizer bill and making sure that your soils were in a good way when you were doing no-till. I'm just curious, you are a crop consultant, you're intimately familiar with nutrient management plans with your consultants as well. And I'm wondering, have you seen how having a nutrient management plan helps people to save money on fertilizer because it's more kind of directed in a way? Like you mentioned grid sampling and the importance of that, of filling the holes. I'm wondering if you've seen when people have adopted a nutrient management plan, if it's helped them financially in that way.
Well, everybody knows fertilizer is expensive, so you've got to use it right, and you've got to put it where it needs to go. So grid sampling really helps with that. Something I see when I talk to people, the requirements for 590 or 5 acres per sample. Well, you can't make good recommendations on a 5 acre grid sample. It has to be at least 2.5s. I've been running my own at 2s. I sample every other year. So the year that I sample, I do a variable rate spread. And then the next year I do a maintenance spread, and then back to a variable rate spread. What I've seen is when I've got my soil to the optimal levels, and every farm's the same. There's good places and there's poor places. So the poor places on the variable rate year don't need as much fertilizer as the places that really, can produce. So by doing that, I'm keeping my soil consistent. One of the things I found on my farm and most other farms too is in the past, the manure didn't go very far away from the barn. People had open tractors and they were basically getting rid of it. And so close to the buildings, on my farm, the P test was 70 and the K test was 270. And at the other end of the field, the P test was 7 and the K test was 70. So we know what differences that is. And so subsequently, the east end that was the low end got lots of fertilizer, and the west end that was high got no fertilizer. But we really weren't spending that much more money than a maintenance spread because all the fertilizer is going at one end and not at the other. So that's the field that actually did the corn growers. That's actually the best soil on the farm. And I guess my highest yield I ran down there was 273 bushel that we did in the corn growers. But I've had some places that have yielded better than that, but they weren't entered in the contest. I had it set up last year and then it didn't rain for me. So
Yeah, I was wondering, was there any other nutrient management stuff you wanted to discuss, or maybe we could just talk a little bit like how do you assign like dollar values to this, we talked about the black dirt thing or whatever, and I think that's a little bit simplified maybe, and you might agree, but how do you assign dollar values to the value of like soil conservation and not losing your soil to erosion each year?
Oh, well, that's why we did this soil case study. Um,
Yeah,
I guess the big thing is we should tell people how to access that. Um,
yeah, definitely.
that's through American Farmland Trust, and then go to soil health case studies. Mine is the only one from Wisconsin at this point. Um, I didn't look. There's actually, they did quite a bit of them out west, like California and so on. But I'm going to dive into this a little bit. When we did this, she went back about to previous that I went 100% no-till. So but I was only doing tillage on about half the corn acres after, so basically at that point, my farm was probably 2/3 no-till and 1/3 tillage on an every other year basis. So, in the increases in net income, partly because we changed rotation and adding the cover crops did reduce some fertilizer because it's adding back in. And for this 150 acres that we put under this study, we've got an annual total increased net income of $27,000 and a decrease of about $9,200. So we added about 16, 17, 8, yeah, about $18,000 of added income by doing no-till and cover crops on 100% of the farm. So we could really dive into this and talk about it, but the best thing for them to do is access it and read it for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. We'll probably go ahead and try to link it into the description of this episode too, so people that are following along can click that. But I just read it over the past few weeks preparing for this too, and there's a lot of great information in there, and it's really cool to see what you guys have made work on your farm. And so,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it. It's interesting. The biggest increase is not actually from saved machinery costs, but it's actually from your yielding increases due to no-till, which I found really, really interesting. And I wonder how much that is also with your fertilizer approach, and that you're sampling every other year. You're doing variable rate because you were doing no-till and that approach kind of simultaneously, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And my favorite element of this is machinery cost savings from eliminating rock picking.
Uh, Fellas, that's not funny because the first piece of equipment I bought when I bought the farm was a rock picker. And I just
There
sold the
you go.
rock picker because I pretty much got them all picked up. But uh, it was a haybuster Rockies, and one dump would fill like a pickup box, and like 8-foot pickup box, half full. So two dumps would be a full pickup box. I picked probably at least 300 dumps of rock
Wow.
off the farm, and filled in every. There was an little old pit there, and there was a ditch in the back, and I filled in lots of places with rock. And I don't like picking rocks, and of course, rocks aren't good for equipment or anything. So um, it's just once you get them gone, and once you start no-tilling, that's a job that you don't have to do anymore. I say that's the crop that never fails and you don't get paid for. The rock crop.
The rock crop.
Just gonna say I was the rock picker where I grew up.
Oh, you guys know
I
about
think maybe
that,
we
huh?
all were at some point.
Get them by hand?
Yeah,
That's
not on smaller farms and stuff, but
that's
yeah.
really no fun. When I
That's
first
why you have kids, right? The kids are the rock pickers. Michael, you got any other questions for Jake?
I think that's all I've got, Jake. We really appreciate having you on and sharing your experience and expertise with us and agronomic wisdom. So,
I'm going to throw one more tidbit at you guys. Every farmer should be trying some new things. Whatever they try, make your farm a bit of an experiment somewhere. I actually got to go to, we got a big dairy that was built that's 5,000 cows this winter and tour the facility. And I got in the back, we were looking at the manure system. Well, they got separated manure solids. And I asked them, what are they doing with those solids? And they go, well, anybody that wants them can have them. So, but you got to have the nutrient plan and so on to do it. So I'm composting out 3,000 ton of separated manure solids this summer. And once again, I'm hiring it hauled. I'm hiring it being turned with the compost turner, and then I'll hire it to be spread. And I'm seeing if that's economical versus buying fertilizer. So I just read that phosphate was going up a little bit more. So I'm hoping that I can do manure for less money than I'm spending on fertilizer. So
Yeah, well, we'll have to tune back in a couple months, a year or so, and see what your numbers are like for that.
yeah, we'll see how this comes about. I'm like, somebody's got to try this and let's see how
Yeah,
it goes. So
absolutely. Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
okay, guys, nice talking with you.
Thanks for listening. This has been Field Notes from UW-Madison Extension. My name is Will Fulwider, Regional Crops Educator for Dane and Dodge Counties. And I was joined by my co-host Michael Geissinger, Outreach Specialist in Northwest Wisconsin for the Nutrient and Pest Management Program of UW-Madison. A big thank you to Joe Ryan for creating our theme music and to Abby Wilkie-Maki for our logo. If you have any questions about anything you've heard today or about your farming practices in general, reach out to the Extension Agriculture Educators serving your region.